Welcome to Faith Talks Wood Podcast. I'm Will from Flat Woodworks.
And I'm Tom from Mountain Valley Maker.
And we're a podcast about, faith and woodworking, and we talk about a little bit of everything in between. Tom, I had something crazy happen to me this week. The gate on our SUV, you know how it has struts that help lift it when you open it? Well, my wife comes running in the house. I heard, we live out in the country. We got lots of land all around us, and rifle season just started. And I heard a bang, and I thought it was somebody in the woods shooting a deer. No, the strut, when she lifted up the gate to get some stuff out of the car, exploded, blew a hole through the tail light, and scared the junk out of her. And so she come running, and she's like, "Something's wrong with the car." Made a loud bang. I was like, "What?" And so I went out there, and for those listening, I'll post on the Instagram page a picture of it. It literally blew the gas strut. It looked like, man, a shotgun went off. Kind of like if you remember the old cartoons where they shoot a shotgun and the end of it would come out, if the shotgun didn't go off right or whatever. And so, yeah, that was crazy. I'd never experienced that. I went to the auto parts store. I called the dealership. Nobody had ever seen that happen before. So just glad my wife is safe and she didn't get hurt, but it did scare her, and it was kind of a crazy thing. But so that's a little bit of my week. But how's your week going, Tom?
Oh, man, it's been good. I didn't have a lot of work, so got a lot of shop time. And then yesterday went and hit the slopes for the first time with my daughter. I had a big day planned to work in the shop, and then my daughter all of a sudden said, "Hey, Daddy, do you wanna?" And, when your daughter's 20 years old and in college and you never get time with her, every time they say those words, it doesn't matter what it is, you say yes. And so we went to the slopes and went snowboarding. You don't realize the muscles that you don't use. And so always after the first trip to the mountain, the next day you wake up and you're like, oh, I haven't been twisting quite like that on a regular basis. So a little sore day, but man, we had fun. It's just absolutely beautiful. Bluebird skies. It was about 30 degrees, and which is, when you're snowboarding, that's like a warm summer day at the beach. It's just perfect. So, yeah, man, great week.
That's awesome. Yeah, I haven't snowboarded in years. We have some, I call them mountains, quotation marks, around here. But for the most part, you got to go upstate New York and stuff to get to anything serious. But definitely not Colorado slopes like what you have. But man, today this podcast is exciting. As all the listeners know, we try to have one guest a month on. And today we are honored with one of my favorite YouTubers, somebody who is not ashamed of their faith in Jesus, but also loves being out in the shop and loves just teaching people about tools and about things that he learns out in the shop. And so for the first time ever, welcome Mr. Matt Outlaw. Matt, thank you for being on the podcast, man.
Oh, man, it's an honor. Thank you guys for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, I was thinking when I first found you on YouTube, I'm kind of a YouTube fanatic. I watch all kinds of woodworkers on YouTube and stuff. You were well under 100,000. You were maybe 50, 40,000 subscribers, and it's been awesome to watch you grow. And I remember one of the things that really caught me onto your YouTube channel was that you always wear a shirt that in some way reflects your faith in Jesus. And you've, in times in your videos, have just blatantly said, I'm a follower of Jesus. And there's two different viewpoints on that. We had on Drew Witt, and he's a little bit different. He's a Christian, devout Christian, a little more edgy, and he's somebody that he will tell you, I really don't talk about it because that's not the crowd that I'm pointing towards. And to where I know Drew pretty well, and you're a little bit different on there. So, so what we like to do is have a guest on and have them tell us their testimony, how you got in faith and how Jesus grabbed you and how that all happened. So, Matt, how did you come to know Jesus?
Well, I was probably about 12 years old, give or take. So I grew up in the country, rural Arkansas. That's where the rednecks come from, And so a friend of mine had a 3-wheeler, and we would 3-wheeler. He would come pick me up, and we would go to church, a little old country church, a little Methodist church. And it's not like you think of Methodist church today. They're very formal, right? And so the preacher will wear robes, and it wasn't like that. Like, it's just Southern people. So it's just good people. And so we went to church all the time. Every Sunday we would go. He would take me on his 3-wheeler, and me and him were good friends always together. And I went to Sunday school and all that stuff. And I was just going to be going, something to do, And I don't know. It went on there for several months probably. And they had a big revival at the high school, in the high school stadium, which, it's a small town. My graduating class had like 35 people. So you can imagine the football stadium is not, massive, but it's it's about the biggest place you can put people, Preacher was on the field giving the sermon. And this is one of those where, I don't know if you guys remember back in the like 80s, late 80s, this is about the late 80s. They used to so down here anyway, the preachers was like, not again, they like, is against rock and roll and all that stuff. They had like barrels set up, and people were bringing their CD or not even CDs, cassettes, and putting them in the barrel. They burned them, man. It was like that kind of stuff. Anyway, we was at that revival. It was like a 3 or 4 night thing. And on the last night, if I remember right, the preacher, they give the call for anybody who wants to, answer the call of Jesus to come down. And that night he said, if you're afraid to come down here, ask your friend to come with you. And me and my friend looked at each other. I was like, he's like, you want to go? I was like, let's go. And so we went down there, and both of us accepted Jesus that night. And of course, life, I'm 12, and I was saved right then. I have no doubts about that. But I personally pulled away from God over the years and come back and pulled away and come back. But one thing about it, he's always pursuing us, and it's kind of what is so amazing. He loves us so much that he's always pursuing us, no matter how far away you pull or how far you try to run or what you're trying to do with your life. And you think, everything you have going is more important. He's always pursuing you. And that's one thing. It's just so amazing.
That's awesome. And so you said you pulled away and came back and pulled away and came back. When was your last, where you are now, like 10, 15 years ago or something? What was that like when you finally became an adult and decided it's time to really follow?
Well, I mean, through my high school years and stuff, I still went to church and all that and did pretty good. I got married like right out of high school. It's one of those things where I'm at the altar. I know I'm not supposed to do this. Everything in my body's telling me not to, and I do it anyway. I have friends, family, all of them telling me not to, and I got married anyway, and that lasted 6 months. Like, it was that long, and it just didn't work. And so we got divorced, and at that point, like before we got divorced, I would read the Bible in Matthew where it talks about divorce, and it would just devastate me. I was like, I want to cause her to be an adulteress. I want to, she was already cheating on me. I called her cheating. And I was like, man, this ain't right. I can't do it. And finally I was like, I just can't. I can't stay with her, And so we got divorced. And then, of course, I felt like I was damaged goods. Nobody would ever love me again. It's just Satan telling you all these lies, And so I went through that for a while. And that period in my life, I started drinking really heavily. And just was just running away basically, and had it. And then I met a friend of mine was a preacher, and he invited me to church, and I started going back to church, and if the doors were open, I was there. And then I met my wife, and we got married. Everything was going great. And then we stopped going to church. I started drinking a little bit, and she told me, she said, I didn't marry an alcoholic. And she said, I had started drinking like 2-3 beer at night. And she said, you're drinking too much and you're going to stop. I was like, okay. Of course, I didn't take it that well. I got, puffed up and mad about it. And then I thought about it. My mom, we could talk about later, but had been addicted to prescription medicine pills my whole life since I was 4. And so that was a wake-up call for me when she told me that. I was like, I don't want to go down that path. I saw it, and I don't want to do that. And so we kind of get back on track, and everything goes good. We moved to Monticello, which is about 20 miles away. And then we stopped going to church again. Nothing happened. There's nothing that said, there was nothing in our life that stopped us. We just stopped. And it's one of the biggest regrets of my life. And because at that time, my oldest son, we have 3 kids. My oldest son and my daughter had gotten saved and baptized. My youngest son was about 8 or 9 years old. And it was at a Wednesday night service. He got saved. And then he got baptized. And just a little while after that, we stopped going to church. And we didn't go to church for several years. And during his high school years, my youngest son got influenced by a young man he was hanging around who was an atheist, who basically convinced him there was no God. And so even to this day, he's 21 now. He lives with us and doesn't believe. He sees us pray every night. He sees us go to church. He hears us talk about it, but he doesn't believe in God anymore. And I believe that Satan used us not going to church and me not being the leader of the household and taking my family to church as an avenue to get to him. Now, I do believe that God will pursue him, and I believe that God has great things in store for him, but it's going to be a harder road for him, I think, now because of that. And that's just one of the biggest regrets of my life. We go to church regularly now, and he sees us go. But just going to church, not saving your soul, but it's a good place to get to hear the word, you get to praise God, and you get to be around your family, your church family. So it's a good place to serve. And so that's just a lesson for anybody listening. If you're the leader, if you're the man, you're the leader of the household. God has put you in that position for a reason, and I didn't take it seriously enough.
Amen. The thing about going to church is, that's not what saves us, but it's kind of the same thing. If you never ate food, your body would deteriorate. I mean, you have to have food, and that is a place where we go and get nourishment for our spirit, and so it's really important.
One of the things people don't realize, I'm a huge advocate for men stepping up, and because I didn't have a very strong father figure, and was raised by my aunt, my mom, addicted to pills and stuff as well, and so very similar. But the Bible holds men to a higher standard, and we will be judged harsher because of what we've been given, right? And it's very important for us and for all men, if you're listening, man, we got to lead. The generation Satan wants to grab at our kids, at our family, and especially at our marriages, because it's the one place that when you are married in a covenant with God, with your wife, it's the closest you're going to get to Jesus until you die. And that's what marriage is about. And so what's Satan want to do? Well, he doesn't want you to be close to God, so he's going to tear apart everything he can to try to take that down. And so important for us. Yeah, good stuff, man. And so, kind of like you, addiction is not something that I've cared to mess with, because I know my family history, and know, man, it's there. And so I don't drink alcohol. I never have. I have drank it before, but people I work with, I work in the secular world, and we just had our Christmas party last night, and they're like, "Will, you're not going to have a drink?" Like, guys, you know me. You know I'm not going to have a drink. They're like, "Oh, we love to see you drunk." I'm sure you would, but it's never going to happen. Right. And it's just one of those things. And it's because my mom was an alcoholic, addicted to medication, and I saw what it did. And I don't want to be a stumbling block for somebody else. I don't want them to see Will, the deacon of the church or whatever, and say, well, if he can drink, then I can drink. And that means I can have 4 beers. And that means I can, you know what I mean? And so, but yeah, I'm really passionate about men stepping up. So that's why I was like, that's awesome. That you're seeing that.
I remember throughout that entire time, I never stopped praying. I think that's one of the things that, even if I wasn't going to church, even if I didn't feel close to God, I prayed even if it was only every night before bed. So I think that's one thing that has really helped. Like it really, I don't know. I just felt like that you always try to stay in contact, even though he's pursuing us, he wants to hear from you too. I mean, he loves us enough to send his own son to die for us. And like, we can't fathom the amount of love he has for us. And he does want to hear from you, even if you're complaining about your day or, or if you're praising you were able to wake up today and breathe the fresh air. I mean, it's just, we all have things to be thankful for. And I think a lot of times we get lost in that fact. And then we just don't pray. We just get out of the habit of praying. And it can be a habit and not just, I have to do this. It's just one of those things that you just get into doing it, and I think it's very important.
The thing about praying, it's honestly like any other habit in life. The more you do it, the more it just becomes kind of part of what you do on a daily basis. And I think so many people think that prayer has to be down on your knees, hands in the air and praying for 45 minutes. And honestly, it says in Thessalonians, pray without ceasing. Well, you're not going to pray 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
Right.
But it can be, you're in the shop and, hey, Lord, can you help me figure out how to cut this angle? Hey, Lord, thanks for not letting me fall off that ladder, whatever the case might be. Just, little tidbits throughout the day of constant communication. And also in Thessalonians, it says, gives thanks in all circumstances. And that right there, giving thanks throughout your day for whatever it is, thank you for this amazing meal my wife cooked, or, thank you I didn't get hit by that truck that just ran the red light, or whatever it might be. But that constant communication, it's the more you do it, the more natural it becomes.
Yeah. A couple of things on prayer that my preacher said recently that really struck me. In one sermon, he said, your prayers don't have an expiration date. He said, they don't expire. You're praying for your family, and that can impact generations, like people you'll never meet. You just think of like Abraham. We're probably still benefiting from Abraham's prayers now. Like it never expires. And I can't quote the verse number, but prayer of a righteous man availeth much, right? And so I've read that many times, never thought about it. We are righteous because of Jesus' sacrifice. And because we are righteous, our prayers are heard, and they actually get, answered if it's in his will. And so it's something that when he said that the other day, he said a prayer of a righteous man availeth much. And he said, you are righteous because of Jesus. And I was like, I never thought about it that way.
Yep. And that's, you go back talking about men in James 5:16, it talks about us confessing our sins to one another. And then it goes on to say that the prayer of a righteous person has great power as it is working. And so that's why stuff like this right here, where we gather together and we talk about our faith and talk about our weaknesses and pray for one another, it's just so powerful.
I agree.
Yeah, and the one thing in Scripture that says you will always get abundantly if you pray for is wisdom. I think it's in James. And so that's one of the things that I always encourage guys. Like, you may not know what you need or what God is working through you, but pray for wisdom, because that wisdom is going to give you the discernment and the lens to see things and act upon things that otherwise you wouldn't be able to do. And praying for wisdom, every time I pray, I'm always asking for wisdom, because I'm an idiot and I need help daily to make it through and to not say things and do things that are going to lead me down the wrong path. And it's a daily struggle, man. It is. But good stuff. So Matt, how did you get into woodworking? It's funny. We interview people on the podcast, and it seems pretty common, and myself included, that you get into woodworking because I ain't got no money and I need to make something for the house, or I need to work on something for the house. And that's how kind of it was for me. And I think Tom as well. And so how'd you get into woodworking, man?
Well, I was broke and I needed some money. So I had the YouTube channel called Scanning was it Monitoring Reviews is the name of it. It's still active or still there. I don't post anything there. Anyway, that channel, I was big into radio scanners at the time, and had gotten into good with companies. I was testing their radios and stuff. And that channel was making me about $100 every 6 months. So about $200 a year on ad money. And I didn't know anything about affiliate money or anything at the time. And so I got $100 and in my bank from them. And I was like, man, I need to make this make money somehow. And I was sitting in front of the computer one day and watched a video. I don't even know why. God gave it to me, I guess. Jay Bates was making an outdoor chair set. It was an older video. I saw it on YouTube, and it had free plans. I like free. So I downloaded the plans, and I looked at them, and I thought, that's easy. I could probably do that. And so I borrowed a circular saw from my dad and a couple of drills from my father-in-law, and I went to the store and bought some 2x4s. That's all. He built the whole thing out of 2x4s. And I made it in the afternoon. Like, it was that easy. And it didn't look the greatest. It looked all right. And anyway, my wife comes home and she's like, oh, that is awesome. I'm going to put that on the deck. And I said, no, we're going to sell this. I need to make some money. And she helped me. She set it up. She put a rug down in her garage before it was my shop. Put a rug down, like put a drink on the table, like some sweet tea or something. Put a couple flowers on it. We took some pictures and posted on Facebook, and those sold within a day or so. I think the next day, I got $150 for them. Way too cheap, but I was happy. I made my money back plus. And so I went and bought some more 2x4 and built another set. And I just repeated the process. And then I thought, well, I can make a bench, because he had a plan for the bench too that goes, it looks just like them, but they're just stretched out. So I built the bench and sold a couple of those. And before long, people were starting to ask me, could you build this? And I had no idea if I could, but I said yes. I would build the dining table or whatever, And I don't know, that rocked on for 3 months. Well, I started in February 2017, and I started the YouTube channel in May. So my thought was, I could probably make another $100 or $200 a year off of YouTube doing woodworking too. And so that's how I started woodworking and the YouTube channel. And it was strictly financially driven, because, like, seriously, we had just come out of bankruptcy. I had to watch my wife give up her car, and we were sharing a truck. And at one point, we were 4 months behind on the mortgage. We were fixing to lose it. If it hadn't been for my dad, it would have been gone. We were in a bad way. We had taken her dad in. He had a bunch of medical debt, and then he also had a house that we wound up having to take in. And so we just got, like, massively overloaded. And then he went in the nursing home, and he ended up passing away. And it was just a hard financial time during that. And so coming out of that, it was just a huge blessing. Like, woodworking was such a massive blessing to us. Just to be able to, like, literally, the only thing I wanted the money for was to take her on a date or buy her something, here or there that, we didn't have money for that. Like, we were just eating and going to work. That's it. So that's why I started the woodworking.
That's awesome.
I remember seeing a video a while back because you were a trooper, and when you left that, I remember that video where you were like, I'm doing it. I'm going all in. And what was that process like, deciding and realizing that it could be a thing? And,
I was an Arkansas State Trooper for 13 years. Loved it. Like, I ate and breathed it. Like, I really loved it. And one of my main missions in life when I became a trooper was to get drunks off the highway. I wanted to arrest DWIs, impaired drivers. I had watched my mom, like I said, pill addict her whole life. And we tried multiple interventions, couldn't get anything, like, nothing worked ever. And so that was just a passion. Like, I had a passion for it, and I got good at it. Like, I could tell the driving mannerisms. There's just certain things you get picked up on after a while, a lot of training. Anyway, I was doing that, and I got promoted after 10 years or so on the highway. I got promoted to sergeant, which I was still on the highway. I was just a supervisor over 3 counties. And during that time, the channel had really taken off. In August of 2020, the channel, I believe it was straight up God-led. I wore a shirt that said, "In God We Trust," in a video. That was the first video I'd worn a Christian-based shirt. Every other one was just whatever shirt I had on. Like, I didn't think about it. And I wore that shirt, and that video quickly hit 1 million views. And I made a decision when that took off like that I would wear a Christian-based shirt and not be afraid to show my faith in the videos, no matter what. Either if it crushed the channel, it crushed it, or if it did or didn't. And so I started doing that. And I told my wife, I said, we got to double down on this. I said, I think there's a massive opportunity here. And at that time, I hadn't felt no calling to leave the state police. I was in line to be the lieutenant within a year or so, and was pretty much told it was mine if everything tracked like it was supposed to. And so we were just being, working along, trying to do the YouTube, and I was trying to put out a video or two a week. And but everything around probably January of that next year started changing. 21. I just started feeling like you're supposed to do this full time. And I started feeling less passionate about the state police, not about the agency, just about the job. And at that point, like I had thought I always thought I was going to retire as a state trooper. I just assumed it, And then we started thinking, well, what does that look like? With no insurance, no retirement. We have to depend on YouTube's income. And at the time wasn't like, we had 100 and something thousand subscribers when I finally left, like 120 or so. Like it wasn't a massive channel by any means. But we started praying about it. If you've never read The Circle Maker, buy it tonight and read it, or whenever you're listening to this.
I got it right over there. Read it multiple times.
A friend of mine, you may have heard of him if you've watched the channel at all, Brother Riv. He sent me a Wahoo joiner, and then that's how that all kicked off. We become good friends. Anyway, we started. He suggested I read The Circle Maker, and he said, "I'll read it with you, and we'll do a book study, basically." And so every night we would read a chapter, and on our own, and then we would email our thoughts back and forth. Anyway, the story goes that you pray in a circle around what you want, and so my wife and we had just finished the book, and so she said, "If we want this to go full time, we got to pray for it." And so we walked outside our front door and started walking around the house, round and round and round. And we just prayed for it. Like she would pray, then I would pray. She would pray, then I would pray. And then I forgot if that happened. Totally forgot about it. But God, don't forget, right? And so we come in the house, and I never thought nothing else about that part of it. That was probably, I don't know, a couple of months before I left, or even started seriously thinking about leaving. But I had prayed many times also standing in my shop. Multiple times. I have a clear memory of me saying, God, make this my full-time job. Can you make this my full-time job? And this is over the last couple of years before I quit. And so we rocked on, and I was starting to really pull on me. And I told Amy, I said, I think I need to quit and do this full time. And when I told her, I was nervous to tell her. And she said, I do too. And I was like, what? She's like, yeah, I'm all in. And from that point, she's a worrier about a lot of stuff. Never once worried, never blinked, batted an eye. And I was like, what about retirement insurance? She's like, God will provide it. Don't worry about it. We got insurance through the school, because at the time she was a school teacher. And she's like, we got insurance through the school, and that'll be fine. Just come home and jump in on YouTube. I was like, I don't know if it's right or it's wrong. And I work out almost every morning, about 5 days a week. I got a little home gym in the corner of my shop here. And I was out there lifting weights, and I was worried. Man, I was worried. Bible says not to worry, but I was worried. And I was like, what are we going to do? Can this work? Who leaves a secure job like this and jumps into making YouTube videos about tools and woodworking? And I'm just a South Arkansas guy. Nobody around here does this at all. Nobody has a YouTube channel, that's full time. Anyway, I was working out and praying. I was so worried. And I remember it's clear today. If you watch that video, I was racking a weight plate back on the weight tree, and I was praying about it. It's like, well, God, what is this right? What do I need to do? And I racked that weight plate. He spoke to my spirit, and he said, I created the universe. I got this. And I instantly had peace. Instantly. I was like, okay. Just like a Friday morning, I walked in the house, went straight to my wife. I was like, I'm quitting Monday morning. She's okay. And so we wrote up the resignation letter. I walked in, they had no idea. My captain, lieutenant, they always sit in the captain's office every morning. Walked in there, and put it on his desk. And I said, Captain, Lieutenant, and I'd known these guys for a long time, and they're good to me. And I said, I'm giving my 2 weeks notice. And both of them just like, what do you do? What? I was like, I'm going to go do YouTube full time. They thought I was crazy, like serious crazy. He's like, are you sure this is what you're going to do? I was like, yeah, I'm sure. I said, it's happening. And he's like, why? I said, God's called me to do it. I said, there was a man one time, I told the captain, I said, there was a man one time, God told him to go to Nineveh and he didn't do it. I said, he wound up in the belly of a fish, and I don't like fish. So I'm going. And he said, okay. And so what they wound up doing, though, is they were so good to me, man. I had a bunch of time because I'd been there 13 years, and I didn't take much time off. So I had all this time built up, and by state policy, they pay a certain amount. And then they basically let you, I stayed home for 2 months and got paid, basically, because of the time I could just basically take vacation time until the end of it. And so I took up all my vacation time, and then they paid me a lump sum for my sick leave and holiday or something like that. But it was a nice way to go. And they never give anybody retirement parties that just quit, basically. And my guys threw me a little party, and I cried like a baby. And it was rough, man. It was hard leaving those guys, but it was good, man. I don't know. It's just God working in the life. And other than, like, I have nothing else to say about why I did it other than I truly believe God called me to do it.
You know,
I was just say you followed that, and you just hit 500,000.
Yep.
I just saw
hit 500,000 yesterday.
Yeah. And like, man, that's, and the thing, so I was a pastor, and church metrics and numbers was always like do we talk about it? Do we not talk about it? Man, God's blessed you. And I'm not God's going to make you rich kind of whatever that, drawing a blank, but man, he's blessed you so much. I'm sure you've gotten so many emails and messages about, even just wearing a shirt or how you present yourself that has helped people.
Well,
that's a huge testimony.
I mean, Matthew 5:14, man, I really believe we're the light of the world. We have to show people God, because you can stand on the street corner in your town and start preaching, and everybody walk by is going to think you're crazy, and they're not going to listen to you. But when you build relationships with people, that's when they will listen to you. And that's when they will say, well, there's something different here. And if you don't build a relationship, you're wasting your time. Mm-hmm. Like you can walk up to a stranger and hand them a tract, and they're going to throw it in the trash because you've not built any relationship with you. They don't trust you. And if people don't trust you, then they're not going to listen to you, right? And they don't really take into account what you're saying. They're also not looking at your life and saying, well, what's going on here, kind of thing. And when you start building that relationship with people, and you can do that over video, you can do that at your job. You can do it anywhere. You can do it at the gas station you go to every morning to get your coffee or whatever with the clerk. Like, there's relationships being built every day that you have so much power in sharing the gospel with. And it's not Bible beating. I don't believe in Bible beating people over the head with the scripture. That's why I subtly do it. We wear a shirt, which seems dumb and simple, not dumb, but simple. There's a link in every video to the story of Jesus. There's a website. You can just link to it, and it's called The Story. It's in every email we send out. It's in every video description, so that at some point somebody can click on that and go watch the story. And I always title, I say, the greatest free gift I've ever received, and then the link there. And a bunch of people's watched it. Like, I don't remember, I can pull up the stats, but thousands of people have watched that. And at the end, it asks them if they'll accept Jesus or not. And they can click yes or no. If they click yes, it'll basically tell me they've accepted Jesus. Now, I don't know if they were previously Christian and they watched it and they just hit list or what, but that's just a subtle way to share the gospel. We sell product, board butter and different things, trays, Christian-based trays with scripture on them and stuff. And my wife came up with a survival kit. We call it 731 survival kit. And when we ship a product out, there's a survival kit inside there that has you can get them on livingwaters.com. It's called $1 million question. And on the back, it basically asks you where you're going to go when you die. It's a tract, right? And, but that's just another way. If they're buying from us, they are most likely know me, know the videos. They come to the store to buy the board builder or the tray. And so they're getting something else extra in there. And that's not all that's in there. She's got some other cool little things in there, like a rubber band. It lets you know you can stretch. Like she's got a whole little thing in there, magic sawdust and all kinds of stuff. But
I remember that because the first time, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just say, when I got into the woodworking and started making cutting boards like crazy, I ordered your board butter. And I remember getting that. I was like, man, this is awesome. Like I remember that. And so, but we're not really, but we're kind of in competition now. I've developed a hard wax oil. So it's not a board butter. It's not a wax thing, but a little bit different. But yeah, man, that's awesome. I love it. Love that you're unashamed about it. And, there's subtle things that you can do in order to influence people, man. It's awesome.
I have felt the prompting while filming a video that I should share something, and I'll do that if I feel led. As a friend of mine says, he said, when I feel led, if I feel led to do it, it's coming. And I've gotten some negative feedback, but not a lot. Like most people just know that's me, and that's what we're going to do. And of course, I get several people with several comments say, I won't subscribe because of the shirt, or I'm unsubscribing because of the shirt. I'm like, well, if you subscribe, you've already seen multiple shirts, or at least one before you subscribe. But it comes with the territory. Not everyone's going to accept you being open with your faith. And I've also gotten messages from people who are Muslim or any other religion. I say Muslim because the guy told me he was, and I've gotten multiple emails where people say, I don't believe the way you believe, but, and then they say, I appreciate that you're not ashamed to share what you believe openly. And then like today, I got a message today. The guy says, he emailed me, he said, he's been watching the channel and that he had fallen away from God. And he said, I see your shirts, and it prompted me that I was too far away and I needed to make things right. And so, like, I don't know, God's using the channel. I know that for a fact. And that's the whole purpose of the channel. Yeah. We're masking it with woodworking and tools because that's what I love. I have a passion for it. So I'm able to use the passion, but also share the gospel through the channel. And I think for so long, for most of my life, I didn't realize that everyday life, you can be doing that. I was like, I'm very introverted. I'm not going to walk up to somebody or knock on their door and tell them they need Jesus. Like, I'm not that guy. And so, if I don't know you typically in a crowd, I'm the quiet one. Like I'm not an outgoing person like that. And so I always I knew that we were supposed to be sharing the gospel, but I was like, how do I do that? Like, I'm scared to talk to people. If you take the step, God will provide the way.
And each one of us is different. And so like some people can just naturally walk up, knock on somebody's door and start randomly talking. I'm not that guy. I'm like, but once I get to know you, oh buddy, it's on. Conversation's not going to stop, And so I'm more like you, but ironically, so my testimony is kind of similar to yours. I got saved when I was young, and then I went away, came back, went away, came back. But how I came back this last time and have stayed was from a YouTube video on a gardening channel. And so this guy was teaching people how to garden naturally, but in every step of his garden method, he had a Bible verse. And that's what got me back reading God's word. And then, so, man, I think it's awesome. I mean, there's so much negativity that comes through the internet. I mean, but then it's kind of like, anything else. God, the devil meant it for bad and God meant it for good. And so he can take anything and flip it. So, I just think it's awesome and I think we have to take advantage of social media and do it exactly what you're doing. And because they're definitely getting plenty of opportunities to see a negative message. And so then when they stumble across a channel like yours where they see a positive message, it stands out, and that light stands out in darkness. And so, man, I commend you for it. I
think a lot of people, I get messages too where people, like multiples of these, people say, I appreciate that you don't cuss or make lewd jokes and stuff, so I can watch this with my kids.
Amen.
Because a lot of people, even in the woodworking space, like you watch their channel and they'll drop cuss words through there, or they'll make a nasty joke, or, you know, make some innuendo, and you're like, man, yeah, it wasn't really necessary.
You know, I listen to your podcast every week, and I listen to We Built the Thing every week, and the reason being, there's a couple other YouTubers that have podcasts, and I'll watch their YouTube channel. They don't cuss or make crude jokes, but then on the podcast, I'm like, you know, if my wife or daughter walks in here and I'm listening to this, and so consequently, I'm not going to name those people, but I don't listen to it because of the verbiage. I'm like, man, I just don't want that coming in, you know? Mm-hmm. And so I really appreciate you doing that. I do the same thing on my Instagram when I make my reels. I'm like, I keep everything clean. And I think that what we put out there should be representative of what God would approve of, and what do we want to listen to, what we want our kids listening to. So, yeah, good stuff, man.
I would like to say, though, on backing up a little bit, because I just had this thought. Everything's not sunshine and rainbows when you put yourself out there, because Satan will try to attack you in multiple ways, not just with, I don't like Christians or whatever. Like, it's not that. It's going to be other things. Like, I get a lot of, like, just negative comments, and 99% of the time they don't bother me, but sometimes they do. Yeah. And my old trooper comes out, I'm trying to I want to knife hand somebody. I'm like, you can't talk to me like that. You know, I want to really get on the keyboard. And my wife is like, don't do that. Don't do that. And so if you put yourself out there, you can expect some type of pushback. And it doesn't even have to be Christianity. It could be anything. Like, if you put yourself publicly on the internet, people are going to make fun of the way you look. I mean, I'm bald. You know, my eyes cross if the camera gets too close. So, like, my teeth are crooked. Like, they're going to point things out about you that they assume is a flaw in you. They don't know that I actually like having a bald head. It doesn't bother me.
I do too, man.
It's much easier trying to fix it, but they will try to attack you, and that's Satan trying to attack you. And sometimes it'll get to you. Like, it has. I have literally been bummed out, you know, over things that people have said, or emails. Man, I've gotten the worst I've gotten is emails. Like, most people put some pretty bad stuff in comments, but they will really come at you in an email. Like, I've gotten some really, really, really bad ones. Like telling their kids never to grow up to be like me because I'm such a terrible person. And I'm like, what did I do? And I always try to handle that with grace as much as possible. I try to remember, if somebody is lashing out that bad to basically a stranger on the internet, something major is going on in their life. And one time the guy he come at me pretty hard in an email. And I just replied. I was like, hey, man, I'm not sure what's going on in your life. I'm sorry that you feel this way. As no offense, I take no offense to anything you said. I just want you to know, if you ever need to talk, I'm here for you. That's all I said. Like, a day or two goes by, this guy, he profusely apologizing. He had just lost his mom. Something else major had happened in his life. He lost somebody close to him. So he had like two deaths really close together, and he was just having a rotten time. And I was just the guy that day, you know? And so I think if Satan meant it for bad, right? You could turn that around. God uses it for good. And then you open up those communications with the guy, and you can communicate with him over the next several days, check on him, you know, set a reminder. Hey, check on this guy in a week, you know? I think those things are powerful that you can use. Amen. Or God can use.
Amen.
You know, it's interesting. I'm sure you guys have seen, there's several big YouTubers and Instagrammers out there who are responding to negative comments with sarcasm. Mm-hmm. I know Drew Witt does this.
I've done it. I've been guilty of it.
Yeah. I kind of find it funny in some sense, but sometimes, man, people are just like vulgar. And I think the one that really kicked it off was Cam from Blacktail. Yeah. I think he was the one that really
he's pretty famous for that.
Yeah, but
I had a pretty nasty one earlier in the week, and I did that same thing. I said, hey, man, I don't know what's going on in your life to make you lash out like that at me, because we don't know each other. but if you ever want to talk, I promise you, I'm here for you. I said, just reach out. And he deleted his comment. I was like, okay.
Count that as a win, right?
Oh yeah, man.
Wow.
So we'd like to ask you a couple questions just for fun and humor. So I'm going to kick this one off, Will. So Matt, listening to your podcast last year or so, we've heard Amy talking about wanting to get a lathe, and recently you had a post. She finally got the lathe. So my question for you is, how soon is it going to be before she takes over your shop?
Well, it's already in there. I mean, I bought, it was on the workbench, and I said, it can't stay here. And so we got her a mobile stand for it. And, but yeah, I've given her part of the workbench now. The drawers in the workbench are hers to store her tools and supplies in. And she now has the rolling stand with the lathe on it. So it's happening.
I think that's so cool, man. I that's one thing I like about your podcast. Like, how she's talked about, she just go out there and sit on a mat just so she can hang out with you and stuff. But, yeah, I think that's cool. I actually wanted to get a lathe and learn how to turn, and one day I'm going to. But so I know she took a class recently, and I think you took it with her, didn't you? So are y'all both diving into the lathe, or is this just kind of her thing?
It's her thing. It was okay. Yeah. I don't know. It was fun. Like the class we took at Woodcraft, they did a phenomenal job. Like they were really good, really nice, patient. Like we made pins. Like I'm looking at one here on the desk of mine. She loved it, like really loved it. And so she'll probably do more of that. And I'll just clean up after, I guess.
That's one thing. A lathe makes a big mess. You have plenty of your shop always looks spotless in your videos. So.
It's an optical illusion because all the way around me is a mess, and I just have a clean spot that I'm filming in.
That's funny. Well, cool. Tom asked that. My wife, she's a stained glass artist, so she does stained glass like ornaments and all kinds of stuff. And recently, she took over like a third of my shop. And Tom's like, "Oh, she want to take over the whole thing?" I'm like, no, I will not let it happen. So now the plan is to build a shop because we're going to need some space. But but that's awesome.
The cool thing about it, and really, it for both of y'all's channels, but like you were able to combine your wife's beautiful stained glass with woodwork and make that sign for her, and I could totally see where your wife could end up turning something and you combine it into it with a project. So I just think anytime you can, do things together is cool. My wife, she sews and stuff, so she don't care anything about woodworking. But the one thing that I'm excited about getting a laser for is my wife does like painting. You know how like people like door hangers for every holiday of the season, and so she enjoys like painting that stuff and putting ribbons and all that fancy stuff on it. So I'm hoping once I get a laser, we can kind of, combine some of our skills and do stuff more together.
That's kind of what the glass with my wife is. I work a lot, and my wife stays home with the kids. And so when I get home from work, I put phone down, put everything down, and I get on the floor. I play with the kids. We got a 3.5-year-old and an almost 9-month-old. And so that's first priority. And Tom and I talk about on the podcast, and I will preach it to the day I die, that my family comes before my shop. And so there'd be times where we'll talk about like what's going on in the shop. And I'd be like, man, I've been busy. I've just been with the family. But with the glass thing, with her taking over part of the shop, the silver lining is that we both can go out there after kids go to bed and we could both work out in the shop. And kind of funny, she made a stained glass like picture thing, and I built a really nice frame for it. And she took it to her craft show, put a crazy number on it. Just she wanted to take it to show it off, but if somebody wants it, first thing she sold was that.
Wow.
And she was like, I said, well, her dad's like, how many more of those can you make? And she's like, well, I can't make it overnight. Stained glass isn't like, it's like a glue up, right? You build a cutting board or something, you glue it up. Now you got to wait. In stained glass, there's lots of steps, but that is kind of the silver lining. One of the questions we like to ask our guests often is, man, if you only had one tool in the whole shop, what would it be?
Table saw.
Whoa, table saw. Okay. You're a true woodworker. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I can get away with it. I can do a whole bunch with a table saw. I can get around not having a miter saw. I can get around not having a band saw. The table saw is just a must have.
Absolutely. I recently just earlier this year got a saw stop. And the only reason I got one, I would never buy one because I'm too cheap, is somebody was selling one that was all rusted on the top because it sat out in a garage for near nothing. And so I got a saw stop table stop for sub $1,000.
Nice.
And I spent about 3 hours sanding the top, and it's perfect. And so, but I will say a nice table saw makes a world of difference. Going from a cheap little contractor saw to that, it's like, wow, the precision you can get. Yeah, absolutely. Man, we'll roll in real quick to shop talk. Matt, what do you got going on in the shop? What's the next video? What's in your hopper? What you got working?
Currently just making CNC's been working. Like Christmas time's coming up. People's wanting those catch-all trays. So we've been making several of those. I got two builds coming that I'm going to be doing. A lot of people ask for builds and on the channel, and those don't like that. As a full-time YouTuber, you got to figure out what's working and what's not. Builds don't do as well as like tools, tool reviews, stuff like that. So I've kind of skewed my content to that because it just more people watch it. But we still do builds. Two builds I got coming. I've got to. My wife wants we have a mini fridge, and we want to build like a drink station around that. And so she's going to design it, and then I'm gonna build it. So that's one thing we got coming up. We just got we have such a small house. Like our house, we don't have a lot of space. And so we really have to plan where we want this thing. And because the mini fridge itself is pretty good size. And so we're going to try to figure out where it goes, and then she's going to design it. I'm going to build that one. That's coming up. And then I've got my planning guys working on a small, basically a beginner level workbench that we can build out of fairly simple materials, but also it could also, you could scale it up if you wanted to add drawers or anything like that. But when I started working on the garage floor, the garage floor was on a level. And so everything was wampy jaw when I got through. Like it was rocking and moving. And so one of the first things I built was a workbench, and it is awful. I still have it, the CNC sitting on it. And it's like, it just needs to be replaced. So I'm going to build a beginner's workbench, and then also it's going to replace the CNC. So it's going to be built for that little spot right there, double duty, because I keep getting asked for a simpler workbench. And so I think that'll be a good video for beginners anyway, looking to build a small, affordable workbench. Because a lot of workbenches you see, like even mine, the one I built, they're just very expensive for that size, like a 4 foot by 8 foot. And most people don't have that kind of space. So it's going to be a much scaled down version of a workbench.
Yep. That'd be good. I actually, back when you first started your channel, I can't remember how many subscribers you had back then, but it was nowhere near, you didn't have anywhere close to 100,000 back when I had first, and you did a lot more build videos back then. That's where I had stumbled across. I enjoy watching build videos. Yeah. I don't know why. And the reason being is, it's like the old saying, there's 9 ways to skin a cat. Everybody has their own way. At the end result might be the same, but you learn different little trips and tricks, and I never thought about doing it that way. That's why I guess I enjoy the build videos so much. What about you, Will? What you got going on in your shop?
Man, it's been crazy. My wife had this craft show this weekend that she killed it at, and kind of last minute, she was like, hey, because she makes a lot of ornaments, so it's really small. And so she had a 10-foot table, like space. And she's like, hey, do you want to put some like laser engraved stuff or some, cutting board or something out there? I'm like, I got a few days. Like, I don't have much time. And so I took some wood that I had and made a couple really nice cutting boards. And then last year, when I first got my laser engraver, I was gung-ho about finding material to engrave. And Hobby Lobby, as they do, had a sale of like 90% off of all wood products or something crazy like that. And so I bought a bunch of these. I bought them out, and I'd go there every day on my lunch. And if they had more of them, I'd buy them. These charcuterie boards that were like half marble, half wood. And so I bought a bunch of those. And so I engraved them. And my wife's like, I asked my wife, I said, what do you want me to engrave on these things? Like a lot of the engraving I do is usually custom work for people. Like I don't just make stuff. And she's like, okay, make one that says blessed and make one that says home and make one that says, all these kind of generic terms. And they sold. I mean, people liked them. And so I was out in the shop doing a lot of laser engraving and that kind of stuff lately. But other than that, not too much. I take that back. Petrie's Workshop on Instagram, Peter Kapar, he sells DeWalt. I have all DeWalt tools, and he sells the battery holders and like the tool holders, the 3D printed. And so I bought a bunch of them from him, and I built a little cabinet that holds all my DeWalt stuff. So all my DeWalt stuff is on the wall. Everything that can hang is hanging. Other stuff is sitting on top of it. And then all the batteries with my chargers are mounted. And it's the most organized I've ever been. I'm the least organized person. I'm chaotic. I know where everything's at, but it doesn't really have a place. And so one of my goals for next year is to really get organized in the shop because I have a small shop. It's like a 1.5 car garage. And I really have to be smart with utilizing it. And so, but yeah, I did the DeWalt thing. That was fun. I used the brad nailer that Tom, that you sent me, and that was fun to actually, test that out and use that. And it was kind of a fun little project. Other than that, not too much going on with the holidays. I've got some requests for some laser engraving stuff and doing that. And I'd like to make my whole team at work. I always like to make my guys something small for Christmas. So I got to figure that out. But other than that, man, just actually, I was almost late getting on the podcast. Today we got a new electrical service installed. So new whole panel and everything. And he was still running at it as I was coming to record. I had him give this room power and make sure the internet was up. And then he was out there doing that. And I came in to record the podcast, but kind of crazy. But how about you, Tom? What you got? Well, I know what you was doing, and I can't wait to talk about it more maybe next week. But what have you been doing in the shop?
Ironically, so me and him did the just so Matt knows the logo swap challenge, and and I had ordered some epoxy. I had this design in my head and ordered epoxy, and so Total Boat shipped everything out like same day or next day. So they were awesome. But UPS, this time of year, they're about as dependable as the postal service. But so my box of color came in, but the box of epoxy actually ended up arriving the last day of the challenge. So, but at that point before, I had to come up with a different design, and so in 2 days, I came up with a new design and built it. But it was a lot of fun. But I am horrible about when I'm in the midst of a project. If I get the domino out to use it, I use it and I sit it down. Then I go right to the next tool, get it. And so after I'm done with a project, it looks like a tornado went through my shop. And I'm trying to get out of the habit of that, but for some reason I do it time and time again. So we finished that. What was that? Thursday we finished that, the 30th. So on the next day, I spent the entire day and cleaned my shop. And when I say cleaned it, all of my tools I have the back corner of our garage, so they're all on wheels. Dude, I pulled everything out. I vacuumed. So, I mean, I should say not a speck of dust, but my shop looks the best it's ever looked. But I decided to go ahead and rearrange some tools. And because I've kind of had the only thing not on wheels is my table saw. And it's because when I purchased it, I purchased the 52-inch, and so the wheels only work up to the 36. So anyway, but I had kind of like a tool island with my bandsaw and my router table and my drill press backed up against my the end of my table saw. But the problem was my dust collection. I have the Harvey G700 and it's on wheels, and I would need to use the bandsaw. I would disconnect it from the table saw, roll it down. It just wastes so much time. So I rearranged everything, and now, dude, my shop it looks like a new space. And so I'm going to pipe the dust collection down the side of the wall when I get back. And me and my wife are leaving in the morning to go visit her sister for her 60th birthday. And so when I get back, I'm going to finish that and add a little bit more French cleat down that wall so that way I can hang all my templates and my jigs and stuff up on the wall. But yeah, so that's kind of what I got going. And then when I get back, I'm on to making Christmas gifts. I got so much stuff left to make before Christmas. So I like to typically make stuff versus buy it. So, yeah, man.
Awesome.
So.
Well, Matt, we really appreciate you coming on the podcast. It's been an awesome conversation and just hearing your story and about how God's used you and using your channel and woodworking and all that stuff. For those who live underneath a rock and don't know who you are, where can people find you?
731 Woodworks on YouTube. That's the main place I post. Instagram, same thing. 731woodworks.com. I appreciate you guys letting me come on. It's an honor.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Man, we appreciate it.
Very good. And just to give if anybody wants to support the podcast, there's a few ways you could do it. Patreon.com/faithtalkswood. You can give us a 5-star review on Apple, goes a long way. And then also, just shoot us a prayer. We can always use those day in and day out. But really appreciate everybody listening, and we hope you have a blessed rest of your day. I'm Will from Flat Woodworks.
And I'm Tom from Mountain Valley Maker.